Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2018 Preschool Mindfulness Summit. I'm very happy to introduce our next guest, Dr. Mary Pat O'Malley. Dr. O'Malley is a lecturer at NUI Galway in Ireland, and she's a speech and language therapist. She's the author of this children's book, Scary Noisy Things, which is one of the books that you get if you purchase the upsell on this summit. She's also the author of How to Develop Your Child's Home Languages and How to Build Your Child's Language by Using Books. Did I get that title right?
Absolutely, yeah. And they're two ebooks, just to say.
Oh, okay, they're ebooks. Yeah, and she also has another book coming out, which sounds really interesting, so maybe she'll tell us about that a little bit later on. But welcome to the summit, and thank you so much for participating.
Hello, Helen, and hello, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me. I feel really honoured to be a participant in the summit and really looking forward to talking with you.
Great, thanks. So first of all, let's talk about the children's book, Scary Noisy Things. So yes. What is it about and what inspired you to write this book?
Okay, so basically several years ago I did training it's called Floor Time, and Stanley Greenspan is an American child psychiatrist, I think, who the Floor Time kind of originated from. And Floor Time really is about like entering the world of the child, so looking at things like skills like reciprocity, engagement, joint attention. And when I was at the training, the person running it recommended this book called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. And I bought that, and it really blew my mind. The first chapter alone, I was like, oh my God, it was all about acknowledging the child's feelings. And it just really resonated with me personally. Now, I wasn't a parent myself at the time, but I was working, with young children. And it really, as I say, it was like a part of the jigsaw puzzle, a missing piece had just clicked for me about the emotional nature of children. And how, and then not just for children, but for anyone, if you're feeling upset, logic does not help. And how the acknowledging of the emotion, like, really allows you to, it really respects your feeling and allows you to actually move through it and not kind of get attached to the feeling. And there's such relief when somebody says, oh, that must have been very upsetting, or you seem disappointed, or whatever. So then where I work in the university, they have a scheme called Explore, and it's funding projects collaborations between staff and students with a kind of an innovation kind of an element. And I thought, oh, now, I think there's a missing link in speech and language therapy, in that we tend, when we focus on vocabulary, to focus on concrete things like nouns, verbs, would say prepositions. And I was like, but emotion is such a fundamental part of communication. And like, I don't know if anybody's actually working with children on emotion vocabulary, or with parents on what exactly to say when you see your child experiencing an emotion that you find, challenging and that they find challenging. So I thought, well, why not write a book for parents that actually takes you through literally what to say. And then so in the Scary Noisy Things book, there's kind of, I'm just looking at it here in front of me, we have kind of introductory stuff about the nitty-gritty details, because it's not enough to read a book with your child, it's the quality of the interaction and the fine detail of how you say what you say that's important. And I think actually, when I think about myself and what I'm about, that really is what I'm about how we say what we say when we're talking to our children. And then there's a series of pictures where you can have a conversation with your child about, because we picked fear because basically my little girl was afraid of the hand dryers in public bathrooms.
Okay, right.
They're really loud.
Scary.
Yeah. And clearly logic didn't work. So we went for Scary Noisy Things as the kind of scenarios that parents and children could have chats together in a safe place where they weren't experiencing challenging emotion, as a kind of a practice for when the thing happened in real life.
Right.
So that's kind of where it came from. And Ethna McGreal was the student. She was a speech and language therapy student at the time, and she did the drawings, and then we worked together on the text. So, and I'm really happy with it. I have to say, I love it.
Yeah, it's a great book, and what a great idea. And you're right, like that. You don't see many books that kind of address those type of things. So,
yeah, because sorry, but just to say that, like, I've read loads of parenting books. I'm a voracious reader, and I love reading parenting books. But what really bugs me is when there's no, like, well, how do I actually do this?
right. Yeah.
How do I put this? What do I say in this situation? So that kind of motivated the specific conversations about how to say what you want to say.
That's so true. So you have like scripts in there, don't you?
Yeah, about what to say, because I think as well that the logic habit is a very difficult one to break, because instinctively it comes to us to try and reason. So you need like a script to kind of go, okay, right, this is what I remember to say.
So why is it so important that we teach kids that all emotions are okay and develop their emotional literacy? And how young do you think we should start doing that?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, it's just such an interesting question. So really, and actually, subsequently then, after I did the Scary Noisy Things book, I did a course with Gordon Neufeld, the Neufeld Institute on Understanding Preschoolers, and he had a lot in that about emotion and feelings, and how the children are primarily emotional beings, and it's not really until age 7 at the earliest that they begin to be able to kind of work logic into things. And again, you know, it just made sense to me that logic doesn't work, so emotion is the way to go. And I think as a society in general, we have been conditioned to see ourselves as rational and logical. But if you think about it neurologically, like the emotion, like the limbic in the system and the amygdala came first, and the prefrontal cortex is the latest part of your brain. So we are primarily emotional first. So I think to respect the child's world, and also though to connect with them on a deep level, to connect profoundly with your child, they need to feel understood and acknowledged. And the way to do that really is through the acknowledging of their emotion. And I would say, I don't think it's too early. There's no too early. Because I think you have to, because it's like a muscle, we have to build to kind of get ourselves out of this logic thing. And then, we need to practice. So probably the sooner the better.
Yeah.
You know.
Building it into a habit, isn't it? And just
so that it. Yeah, and even like, and I've been practicing this now for several years, and I had an incident recently with my little girl she's 7 now, and she's into these LOL surprise dolls. I don't know if anybody knows about them. Oh my god! Anyway, so she became extremely distressed when she got a doll that she had already.
Okay.
And even with all of my practice and my reading and everything, I really had to bite my lip and not go, it's okay, it's only a duplicate. You know, you try and talk her out of it. And what really, again, it stuns me every time really is, I just let her be upset. And I said, oh yeah, it's so disappointing. You don't really like that doll. You got her already. You didn't want that one. And I'd say within about a half an hour, she was like, oh, I could pretend she was an identical twin.
Right, yeah.
All right, and she had found the solution. And actually, Gordon Neufeld talks very nicely about that the child must go through the emotion in order for their brain to actually develop, and also in order for them to come up with a solution. So she generated a solution. She had gone from, I don't want to open that doll, I never want to see another one, to, oh, she could be an identical twin, or maybe she could be a clone.
What was that? Yeah.
I know. I was like, this stuff really works.
That's a great example of practice, for sure. So can you give us some strategies, as you mentioned, people like something they can go back and try at home or practice right away. So what are some strategies or tools that parents can use to develop these emotional discussions, develop their child's emotional literacy
Okay.
on a daily basis? Like, what should they be doing?
Okay, so I think one of the first things I would recommend is that when you, let's say you see your child experiencing an emotion that you find challenging and that they find challenging, I would do nothing first and just like breathe, and count to 4 or 5, 10, whatever it takes to stop you actually jumping in with stop doing that or stop crying or again kind of instructing them. And to really, I suppose, it really is a discipline or a practice where you observe your child to see what do you think the emotion is that they're feeling. And from my experience and from what I've read as well, it doesn't matter if you don't get the emotion right, because what matters is the child appreciates you're trying to work it out and you're trying to acknowledge. So you're not trying to change their mind or shake them out of the state they're in. So give it your best shot and don't give yourself a hard time if you don't get the emotion right. Do you know? And so that would be the first thing would be just breathe yourself, because none of us like to see our children in distress, and our impulse is to try and, let's just make it better. But it doesn't necessarily serve them to talk them out of the emotion. You want to guide them through it, and that our job is, and it's not easy, but our job is to be there to support them through the emotion. So that so for example, and you can say things like, that must have been disappointing,
right?
That wasn't a nice thing to happen. I don't think I'd like it if that happened to me. Or I can see, and another one that now I found this challenging myself with my own little girl, where she went through a phase where she was playing with these ponies and it was quite aggressive and it was violent, and I was like, oh my God, am I raising a psychotic child? Yeah, would she be a sociopath? And after reading Stanley Greenspan, I said to her one day, she talked about killing this pony, and I said to her, and again, this did not come easily or naturally to me, but I said to her, if I was you, I can see why you'd feel like that.
Right.
I can see why you'd want to kill the pony. And I swear to God, it was like her whole state changed, and she kind of went, like mommy gets me.
Right.
So I wasn't saying it's okay to kill the pony. And I wasn't giving her a lecture on animal, cruelty.
Right.
But it just dissolved.
It was like, I hear you. Yeah.
I hear the feeling, and I see what's behind kind of the behavior.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And the other thing I think as well is to reassure your child, like for example, and every parent goes through this, where I don't want to go to school or I don't want to go back to school, and saying to her things like, there are loads of boys and girls all over the country this morning who feel exactly the same way. And to really reassure your child that like all feelings are okay, and whatever you feel, someone else somewhere is feeling that right now too. So that they don't feel kind of afraid of their feelings. Do you know what I mean? Or and you're not kind of, because if you try and talk them out of it, you're essentially communicating that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
It's not okay to feel that way, and that doesn't help them in terms of, say, like resilience or coping with what happens in life.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. So what about when maybe there's a difficult situation going on at home or at school where a child might be having a temper tantrum, hard for the parent as well.
I know.
Maintain their calmness, and or the child's just very upset about something. How do you manage that situation?
So again, I think there's no easy answer, and there's no one size fits all, and nothing works every time. But nothing works every time. So the kinds of things I would suggest is things like, for example, if your child is upset about something and having a tantrum or whatever, and again, it depends on the situation, but to be below their eye level.
Okay.
It's non-threatening, and because when you think about it, like we do spend a lot of our time probably standing up, talking physically down to children, and how well it's just but physiologically this actually does work where you are below their eye level because it doesn't trigger their fight or flight kind of response. One thing that I tried that worked very well one day for my little girl, she was about, I'd say 2.5 or 3, and she was having a meltdown. Again, I can't remember what it was over. And you laugh at this, I had the toddler taming book in front of me, reading the tips as she was having the tantrum, going, what will I do? And I tried everything from like ignoring her to trying to distract her, and nothing was working. And then there was one tip, which was to actually hold the child physically.
Okay.
So what I did was I basically put her up on my lap and I just put my arms around her and I didn't actually say anything.
Right.
And I just let her, again, it's allowing the feeling. So I just let her get it all out. I said nothing. I just held on to her, and gradually it subsided. And then her attention was caught by something out the window, and we'd moved on, and nobody's feelings were hurt. And I didn't feel bad that I had kind of, raised my voice or tried to talk her out of it or whatever,
Yeah.
And then sometimes as well, you just have to leave the situation, if it's somewhere public or whatever, and just get out of there.
Yeah.
But as I say, there's no one size fits all, but those are very practical things, like the below the eye level, the baby holding the child, the responding to the emotion, and the saying, yeah, it's really frustrating when you can't get what you want, as opposed to you can't always get what you want. Do you know the difference?
Yeah.
So where you're saying it's really frustrating when the thing doesn't go your way, as opposed to you just don't get your way every time.
Yeah.
That's the logical one, and that doesn't work.
Yeah. So using that emotional.
Yeah. And another way in terms of building, we say, the emotional literacy is if you are, let's say you have a child who's maybe 3 or 4 or older and you're reading bedtime stories, is to talk about the characters and what the characters are feeling, and what they might be feeling. So like, I'd say, Cinderella's stepsister is like, why were they jealous of Cinderella? Or, I'd say she was so disappointed when she couldn't go to the ball, or that must have been really difficult, because it's threatening, it's indirect. Also that actually, in a kind of an offshoot, builds language development in general. So it's useful. Yeah,
I love using stories as well to bring out the characters' emotions, as I think and also sometimes I think it's easier, isn't it, for kids to say how a character's feeling than how they're feeling themselves.
Absolutely.
So that's a really good one. So what are the benefits of kids that are kind of being nurtured this way and having these, emotional connections, emotional literacy in their homes? What are the benefits over people who are just trying to raise their children in a very logical way?
I think really, it is incalculable, the benefit really of consistently acknowledging your child's emotion. Now, and the important thing, of course, to remember as well is that all behaviors aren't acceptable. Yeah. So all feelings are acceptable. So we're not talking about like permissive kind of parenting, but that you're acknowledging what the child is feeling, and then you're saying, but it's not okay to kick. So, but then Gordon Neufeld, actually from the Neufeld Institute, has some very useful tips where he talks about saying to the child, for instance, you have hits in you, so let's see, can we help you get them out? So if that means like hitting a cushion or, kicking a ball or whatever it is. And so the benefits then are also in terms of, he would say, for your child's brain development, that in order for them to be able to like problem solve and for their brain to find solutions to things, they need to be guided through the emotion. So another, like a classic example is if you're playing a board game at home with your child and you let them win all the time, then you can argue that you're depriving them of the opportunity to practice feeling disappointed, frustrated, in a safe place. Yeah. And you're actually doing them no favors. So you'd be better off to let the dice fall where they may, really, in terms of they lose, and then help them. Oh yeah, it doesn't feel nice to lose, or nobody likes losing, or I don't like it when I lose. And so on and so forth. And there is evidence to show that children who have like high emotional intelligence actually earn more money then
Right.
I know money isn't everything, but that they go on to, and compared to people with a high IQ, people with high emotional intelligence tend to earn, I think it's something like $20,000 extra per year, than a person who's smart and logical with a high IQ. And I think in terms of another benefit is around their sensitivity to other people's emotions. And seeing the emotion in someone else, and if that's the model they're receiving at home, then it makes them a better citizen in a way, you know, and with their peers and so on and so forth. So again, and just that sense of, I think we all probably have a yearning to feel accepted as we are, and if that is the gift you can give your child, like, that's amazing. And it doesn't cost any, you don't have to buy anything to do it. You know what I mean?
It's amazing, and I think consistency is really important in all of this, isn't it?
Absolutely. But also not to give yourself a hard time when you forget it. Because
compassionate,
yeah, exactly. Be compassionate with yourself, because of course they're there to press your buttons. So you're not always going to get it right, but they will know your intention is positive. And then the other thing I think from that book, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, that I found really helpful was this idea of your emotion being authentic to the situation. So if you are feeling annoyed, you would say to the child something like, for example, I am ready to explode. So if I was you, I'd get out of here, or something like that, so that because you're being authentic then. Or saying, I feel really annoyed now, or I'd say to my little girl sometimes, look, I've got this much patience left, like that much, so don't push me.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So we're just coming to near the end of the interview. So I just wanted to know if you wanted to tell us about your new book that's coming out, and then if you had any other last tips for the viewers that are listening.
Okay, thank you, Helen. So this is good actually, because it's going to make me finish the book. So I'm writing, because I'm a speech and language therapist, and I'm really interested as well in multilingual language development. So I'm writing a book for parents on how to grow all of your child's languages while still having fun, and it's coming from the speech and language therapy perspective, again with very specific techniques. Now, I have to say, I've only started writing it, so don't hold your breath, but I would love to have it done by the end of the year. And so that would be that. And I'm also working on another book about frustration, and similar to Scary Noisy Things. Yeah. I'm just waiting for the person who's doing the illustrations to finish the illustrations. And that would be a kind of explaining, like, it's a different angle on frustration, your own frustration and the child's frustration, and again, how to have the conversations to be their guide through frustration.
Right. Okay. Wow. Sounds really interesting. So we'll have to look out for those. Well, thank you once again for coming on and sharing all these ideas. And I know the parents and teachers as well will find them very helpful. And thank you for donating these books for the people who buy the upsell pass. They're going to love receiving that. So thank you once again, Mary.
You're very welcome. Actually, what I think of it, I just have one last tip on about mine, and it's again from my own little girl, and I hear her saying something like, I'm not good at, let's say, I'm not good at writing. And there may be like frustration around the homework and completing the homework and all the rest. And this is to do with mindset and whether the child has a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. Carol Dweck has really good stuff on this, but where you say, oh yeah, you're not good at writing yet.
Right, yeah.
Because you haven't practiced. So you need to practice, and when you practice, things get better. So that, again, it's that fine detail around, it's one word, but it makes all the difference around the attitude to the thing. So it's about the practice is the thing. It's not that you are not good at it.
Yeah. I love her work as well.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful.
I'm always saying yet.
Yeah. Oh yeah, likewise, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I know we will keep in touch.
Okay, and thank you so much. And I hope everybody really enjoys the rest of the summit. It's a wonderful endeavor.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, take care. Bye.